In this tutorial, we are going to revisit data cleaning, which we had started in the last tutorial after unioning. We're going to look at it in two ways. Then we're going to talk about what to do when your headers don't actually say what you want them to say. And finally, we're also going to look at the sort tool, something that you should do with your data quite frequently. So if you recall, we read in 3 classes from our original file from Frey Vincente Bernardo B. There was a class 4A, which had some students, a class 4B, and a class 5A. Each one was read in union so that the data got compiled top to bottom. And one of the things we noticed was that as we went down, there were some entire rows of data that was blank. But there were also some students who might have missed a question that is also blank. So we're going to talk about 2 ways of dealing with missing null values. In either case, we are going to be cleaning the data. So in your most popular ones up here on the strip, we're going to bring in the data cleansing tool. And the first thing that I showed is that when we have rows and columns that are entirely blank, we can simply remove them. I'm going to leave everything else for right now here. So I'm going to remove the rows and the columns that are blank and click Run. And as we saw previously, before the data had 99 records, and you can see this yellow is showing there's some students who have 8% blank. Just going to go across the top here, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 9. So I'm going to focus on P7 maybe in a minute when we come back, 8, 8, and maybe P10. So then when I ran the data on the right-hand side, we got a much cleaner data set because we have 100% of the data is filled in here in student's name, gender, grade level, and in their first question. But if we come over to P7, we still have a student that's blank. And so I want to figure out who that student is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the sorting file in. Now we noticed that happened in 2 of the questions. One of them was P7. So in order to sort, everything's always going to happen over here in configuration. When you want to do something, I'm going to click on P7. Let's do it as ascending for right now. So if I click Run, remember, when we look at these bubbles, on the left-hand side, I can see what the data looked like before. On the right-hand side, I can see what it looks like after. So what it did is it pulled the null to the top and then gave us the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and the 7s. So you can see where our null value is here. So since I know P7 has a null value, I'm going to bring that data cleaning in a second time. And for now, I'm going to just focus on P7. So I'm going to click None here. Just for right now, let's look at P7. I'm going to say, I'd like to look at P7. And what I'm going to tell it to do is I'm going to tell it to replace null values with zeros. And I'll also get rid of leading and trailing white spaces. It's always a good idea. So if I click Run, okay, what you'll see is before I did anything with the data, P7 was a null. And then after, P7 is now a 0. Now I could have done it with all of them simultaneously and would put zeros in for all the students. If I'm okay with 0 being my replacement value, it's a great way to do it. Otherwise, I might want to choose something else to go in there. But for this specific case, I wanted to show you how you could quickly put in values when you have missing values or null values. The second thing I want to look at is, what is P1, P2? What is estudiante and sexo and nivel? And so if you take a second to really think about what's happening with the data set, we are working with Fey Alegria. And in Fey Alegria, they have several different variables that they're looking at. And they gave us access to their quiz. And in the quiz, the first question says, what is the highest level of education? That's P1. What is the best, which of the following best describes your father's work status? That is P2. Well, P1 doesn't make sense to anyone unless they know the survey thoroughly. So we need to fix P1, and we need to put a short header that would allow people to understand what it represents in the survey so that when we're analyzing, it makes sense. So maybe dad ed or father education. And P2 might be something like dad work. And then you would go through and you would read each question from the survey in order to come up with what the headers are. So if I want to fix these, what I can do is I can bring in what's called the select tool. And if we bring the select tool into our huge workflow now, we can see that it provides a field that currently shows what type of field that is how big it is as far as data left to right, and then do we want to rename it? So I might want to say estudiante is student's name. Notice I leave an underscore here so that if I read it into something else, it doesn't get separated. It's really important to make sure you kind of put a lower joiner. So student's name, gender, grade, and then we said P1 might represent something like father's education. So I might say dad underscore ed. And then I might say that the second one is dad underscore work status. So you want to come up with short names that would make sense as header. You want to do it for each one. But if I run this, what will happen is if I look at the data prior, we have our unioned data that's been cleaned, then sorted, so we could get rid of some nulls. And then if I look at my data before and I look at my data after, you can see it's fixed my headers so that someone might be able to make sense about what these numbers represent in the survey. So we have looked at some cleaning, some sorting, and using the select tool. And notice over here, it shows you in pink what were the major changes that you made in case you want to undo them. Hopefully this helps you get started.